We're back with another call for aid today, and today we have a great question, I think for both old Dungeon Masters and new Dungeon Masters, about how to get your players to take the game's threats, the game's dangers, just a little bit more seriously without completely killing them. So, great question. That's what we're talking about today. I hope you guys are ready. Let's get started. Welcome, adventurers. What's going on, guys? My name is Cody. This is Taking 20, a channel about all things role-playing games. And today's question comes from one of our Taking 20 community members, Sam Kennedy. Let's take a look at Sam's question. How to change players' tactics in situations. Time and time again, my players will treat D&D like a video game and risk death in situations that they really shouldn't. How do I get across a real threat in these scenarios? I've unfortunately had to avoid TPKs in anticlimactic locations simply by fumbling dice rolls. Yes, I know that's not a good call, but I don't want to put them off the game. Great question, Sam. Thank you for asking. So I really like this question because this is something that I personally have come across in the past, and I'm sure all Dungeon Masters and Game Masters that have been in the hobby for a really long time have probably encountered this at one point or another. And, I definitely have some advice and some tips on maybe how to pull them closer to your point of view for taking threats the right way. But before we jump into that, I do want to maybe float the idea out there on how big of an issue actually is this. Is this just something that you're wanting to do because you're wanting to set up the big bad guy that your players encounter and have to run from so that they can overcome it later? Or is this something where they are just being reckless all the time? If it's the former, then, maybe consider how big of an issue is this? Is it something that maybe you could live with? If it's happening all the time, then yeah, absolutely. Let's try to get those guys in the right frame of mind so that we can, let them know, hey, I'm having to pull punches. I don't want to have to do that as much. Maybe let's try to get those players to be less reckless at the table. So the first bit of advice that I would have is for you to roll openly. This is something that, some DMs feel some way about. They want to have that DM screen. I personally have made a video before that I use a DM screen in my home game. I fudge rolls very, very, very occasionally. Yes, there's a whole topic about that. Other DMs feel completely differently where they don't fudge anything. And so if you're having players that you're behind the screen, you're fudging rolls for them because they would die, their characters would die off and not be able to handle your balanced encounters because they're just being so reckless and they're just attacking absolutely everybody and they're just playing like murder hobos. Then take the DM screen away. Take the DM screen away, roll openly. It won't take very long when you start rolling openly for your players to look and be like, oh wow, we're in trouble. It really won't take very long for them to understand that there is an actual threat. So part of the issue here is they probably don't understand that you are having to pull those punches because you're doing all the work behind the DM screen. So the first bit of advice I have is to maybe consider rolling openly. That should get them moving in the right direction for understanding things can hurt, things can hit them often, and things can hit hard. Now, before we go over the rest of the tips that I have for you, I want to give a huge shout out to my sponsor for this video, Miniature Market. Miniature Market is fantastic. I personally have been using them for a few years now, and honestly, it's because their pricing is amazing and their selection will just blow you away. So if you've never checked out Miniature Market, I highly recommend them. They will ship any orders in the continental US for just $5.99. And if your order's over $100, they're gonna ship that to you for free. Also, they ship singles for just 99 cents. So if you're a Magic the Gathering player or you want to pick up a few D&D minis, it's crazy cheap. So these guys are fantastic, amazing customer service. I cannot recommend them enough. Thank you, Miniature Market, for helping sponsor this video and making this video possible. Okay, Sam, so the next bit of advice I have is the one that all the veteran players right now are screaming at their monitors as they're watching this video, and that's to just let it happen, to let your players take lethal damage, to drop one or two of them, and to go ahead and kill them. You know, if you can avoid TPKs, do what you can to avoid it without trying to fudge so much. But if you let one of them learn by having their character die off, it will be a lesson that I think everybody kind of needs to learn at one point or another. If you never have a character die ever, then you begin to feel a little bit invincible. So that's something that, go ahead and let them take that damage. Don't hold back. Again, just like rolling in front of them, try not to coddle them as much, and that will teach them a lesson very quickly. The third bit of advice I have for you is to maybe look at variant rules. So if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons 5e, which I assume you are because you said you're playing D&D, and I can't imagine you're playing 4th edition right now, 5e is tough on Dungeon Masters for having their players feel like they can be killed. 5e is very, very easy once you get past the first few levels for players. And a lot of that has to do with how health works. In 3.5 and some different systems, you can go below 0 health. So in something like if you're playing Pathfinder, it's much harder on players for when they start taking loads and loads of damage, and that will, again, let them know very quickly that, hey, we can be killed. And in 5e, since you can't drop below 0 health, it's really, really easy for you to drop to 0 health. The Bard does Healing Word as a bonus action and still makes an attack in the round. You stand up without provoking any attacks of opportunity, and, no harm, no foul. You went down for a half a second. That can be a little difficult on Dungeon Masters. So I would advise maybe looking into a few different variant rules with your table. There's a lot of really great homebrew stuff out there in the forums. And again, I'm just spitballing here. I don't want to go on record and say, oh, this is what Cody does in his home game. It's not. But maybe have them take additional damage past 0, half of it. So if they're at 3 health and they take 13 damage, have them drop to -5 that they have to heal up before they're able to get back up, or all kinds of different variant rules out there. So my advice is to maybe look into some of those. I know they have meat grinder mode, but if your players aren't dropping because you're worried about TPKing them anyways, that may not be a great solution for you. So my advice would be to look and see if there's other rules and other variants and other homebrews out there that might exist to help you give your players a little bit more of a sense of mortality when things start to get dire. Another thing that you could do is that you could create a monster or villain that is so obviously dangerous to your players that they will understand from the get-go that they cannot just barrel through and hope to survive. This is one of those great scenes where they come into town and it has been just eviscerated. An entire village has been burned down to a crisp. One of the things that I think that Dungeon Masters and Game Masters could do a little bit better, and something that I'm working on, is trying to set the stage for giant creatures like dragons. That should be a terrifying beast. Something that flies and can shoot fire or spray lightning from its mouth. Those will be terrifying. So show the players that those effects happen. Show the players what this thing is capable of. Show the player that your big bad villain in your campaign has murdered an entire town and hung them out in display. It will both get your players interested in hunting down that person and righting that wrong, so it's a good plot hook device, and it will set the tone that, hey, this is something that this is very dangerous. This is something very, very dangerous, and you need to be a little bit more cautious. Also, to kind of tweak that in another little way, and to maybe give you a little bit of an inspiration here, is to introduce a really badass NPC. Somebody that, shows up, they are amazing, they're very competent, and then have them go off and face your big bad evil guy and die. That's another really good way of setting the tone there. So have them fall in love with an NPC, have that NPC be an amazing warrior that it outshines the players, and then have that NPC be immediately killed by your big bad villain. That's a really great way to set the tone. And finally, my advice is always the same thing whenever dealing with small playstyle issues like this, which is talk to your players and set the right expectations with them. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you talking to them and saying, hey guys, we've had a great time. I loved introducing you to the game. I feel like you've picked up on it enough. I'm going to take off the kid gloves a little bit, and there might be things here that you might have to run away from, or things that if you try to attack them head on, it may not work out for you and your characters. Just a heads up. This is something that I'm going to start incorporating into the game. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you metagaming that like that to set the right expectations and try to help shift them to being more tactical so that you don't have to sit all night fudging rolls just to keep them alive. So this is the point that we get to pass it off to the community. We have a fantastic community here that every single week gives absolutely amazing advice. So what do you guys think? What else can we do as Dungeon Masters and Game Masters besides just killing our players, our player characters, that can help them have a little bit of a sense of danger so that they're not just rushing headlong and we're having to sit and keep them alive behind the screen fudging all night? What do you guys think? What did I miss? What advice do you have for Sam and all of us other Dungeon Masters and Game Masters? Of course, I want to give a huge thank you to all of my kick-ass patrons. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Thank you for making these videos possible. It means a ton to me. I just got to upgrade my lights this week, and that is because of you and your support. So thank you guys so much for that. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I'd love to have you subscribe. Every week I'll be putting out new videos on GM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, just hit that subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.